Questions that the motion be agreed to. Member for Joondalup.
Right from the outset, make mention that I'm not the lead speaker for the government on this motion. No, that's all right. No, I'm reserving that pleasure for the members opposite for the minister. But
Okay,
I will
that's
grace
enough.
you with a few minutes of my contributions. It's funny, I guess
Not
right from the
impressed at
beginning, it might be worth actually exploring what this motion is all
No, it
about.
doesn't.
And dare I say, this motion has very little to do with actually exploring and discussing the portfolio at hand, but rather probably a political stunt, a day out from the budget, an afternoon out from the budget to try and, delay the Treasurer, to try and, well, I know, call me cynical if you will, but it seems to me that it was all about, hang on, don't let the Treasurer prepare for the budget tomorrow. Let's get him down here on some frivolous motion, lacking facts, lacking any kind of depth, and try and waste his time. I will say it's interesting. We heard from the member for Cannington, and almost, I suppose, preempting perhaps, and I'd say rightly so, what some of the government backbenchers may wish to talk about in relation to addressing the motion before the House. He sent out a warning, a sturt warning, and he goes, I know that backbenchers are going to jump up and they're going to talk, and I know, I am the all-wise member for Cannington, I know that they're going to talk about rooftop solar panels, and how dare you, I'm putting you on warning. If you even dare to stand up in this place, and talk about rooftop solar panels, I'm going to jump to my feet on a point of order, and I'm going to get the Speaker, whoever's in the chair at the time, to sit you down, because this motion has nothing to do with rooftop solar panels. Now, before I actually explore the veracity of that claim, I found it very bemusing that the member for Gosnells, one of the very first things that he spoke about 1 minute into his speech, was rooftop solar panels. And I was looking for you, member for Cannington. Maybe you were having a belated cup of tea, but I was almost going to do the point of order on your behalf. I was going, where are you, member for Cannington? Your own team were not briefed by you. They went off on a tangent, and in fact, the member for Gosnells, for no less than 3 occasions, spoke about either rooftop solar panels. In fact, he even spoke about solar hot water. Not a lot of preparation. But, then I thought, well, let me put you on notice, member for Cannington. I will, at some stage in the time that I have allotted to me today, I will talk about rooftop solar panels. I will be talking about rooftop solar panels. And before you flex your quad muscles and get ready to jump to your feet, let me remind you of the motion that you wrote. Your motion says that this House condemns the Minister for Energy for his continuing failures in managing his portfolio. Portfolio. Last time I checked, Minister for Energy, solar panels are part of his portfolio. If all you wanted to do was talk about the large-scale renewable energy systems, maybe you should have worded your motion a little bit better. But we've come to expect that from the member for Cannington. He tries to dress everything up and make it sound all intelligent, but generally it's lacking in facts. It's a bit shallow once you scratch between the surface. So just putting your notice, we'll be talking about rooftop solar panels. There's plenty to talk about. There's plenty to be proud about. And if you tend to write your motion so broadly to encompass the entire energy portfolio, well, be prepared for that discussion to take place. But there's something else. For members opposite, let me just reread the full motion. I digress because I only read the first sentence. The full motion says this, that this House condemns the Minister for Energy for his continuing failures in managing his portfolio that have cost Western Australian taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars, and that will cost hundreds of millions of dollars more, particularly, but not limited to, due to his dereliction, according to your motion, duty planned for the large-scale renewable energy target.
Point of order.
The member said he was quoting from the document. He's clearly not. He said, particularly but not limited to. It doesn't say that at all.
Thank I'll tell you what was missing. And I had to almost have a second take. I had to reread your motion. I went back and I thought maybe I was given the wrong copy. There were four words missing, I believe, from what should be a trademark member for Cannington motion. And I looked and I couldn't find these four words. And they were, in inverted commas, energy sector in chaos. I'm going, hang on a minute. Normally every time the member for Cannington talks about our energy portfolio, he can't help but throw in the words energy sector in chaos. I went, okay, today he didn't. Maybe you're not feeling too well, member for Cannington. Maybe it was an absent-minded mistake. Perhaps you've got a new advisor. Is that the case? Have you got a new advisor and they've finally gotten around to you and convinced you that maybe, no, that's not really a valid argument, because in fact the energy sector is not in chaos. Perhaps the penny finally dropped and you realise I can't use that phrase anymore because the energy sector is actually not in chaos. Under this Liberal National Government, the energy sector is not in a state of chaos. So I'm really glad that you finally cottoned on to that. We welcome you to our way of thinking in that relation. It took you a while, but you've gotten there nonetheless. I'll tell you what was chaotic, Bud, and that was the mess that we inherited from Labor when we came into power. We inherited an energy sector that really could be described as having been in chaos. And I just want to gloss over some of those facts, because I think if we're talking about where we are today and where we're heading to in the future, a little bit of history goes a long way. A little bit of history goes a long way in framing the context of what we're discussing today. And we know that Labor went about their disaggregation process with some pretty lofty intentions. And they were good intentions, I won't deny you that. The objective of the reform agenda undertaken by the previous Labor government was to take the pressure off electricity prices. I don't blame you for that. That's a lofty ambition. You should have gone out with that aim. And so you went about with your disaggregation process, hoping that doing so will take pressure off prices. It is interesting, however, that given that that was your aim, that your policy clearly had you increasing electricity prices by 10% per year, year after year after year, for a very long and foreseeable period of time. 10% annual increases in electricity prices after going about a disaggregation process for the whole purpose of which was to take pressure off prices in the first place. Interesting outcome. In fact, all that your process saw happen was an increase in prices and a massive increase in the subsidies that had to be paid to Synergy and Verve. In fact, subsidies that used to be in the range of $60 to $70 million ended up becoming or peaking at $1.8 billion over a 4-year period. Bravo, members opposite. Bravo. That, I'm sure that is plenty to be proud of. And all the while, and we've heard from the Minister of Energy previously in this debate, because as we know there's nothing new coming out in this debate, there's nothing new about tonight, because tonight was not about substance, tonight was about let's waste the Treasurer's time. And so there's nothing new about it, and we know that we've heard from the Minister of Energy in the past that Labor actually left Verve on a path to near bankruptcy. If you want to go into the finite detail of that, I've got no doubt the Minister of Energy will be able to do that, but we've discussed it before in this chamber. I'm amazed that we need to remind you yet again that had we have left you to your devices, God only knows where Verve would be today. So this government has made the hard decisions. We've made the decisions that needed to be made to get the energy sector back on track. And so we changed the vesting contract for Verve. That was a very important step to take. We merged Synergy and Verve, a move that was strongly opposed by members opposite, strongly opposed. Even I was in the chamber when these things were being discussed and MPIs and during question time and condemning us and how dare we do it. Yet it's interesting, if in fact you've read any part of the mid-year review, the mid-year statement that came out in December, that actually in there in the detail, you'll find that we've already achieved, or we've already booked over $500 million in terms of savings, and a large part of that is as a result of the merger of Synergy and Verve. $500 million in savings. Not a bad outcome, but opposed by the members opposite. Also, we know that what we want to do is we would like to move to a different regime. We want to be moving towards a market-based system. But really, if you're going to be moving to a market-based system, one of the key things that you really need is that your costs really need to be aligned at the time you start off. If you're going to start off in a market-based system, your costs really should be at a point of parity. And actually, if you were to sum it all up, I would say that that is actually where the true chaos is that was left behind by members opposite. Because of your failed disaggregation, where we are at the moment, despite 62% increases in electricity, it's a given fact, we know that, we've had it discussed in this chamber, even after all of that, because of the failed attempt of reform undertaken by the members opposite, we are still 20 to 30% behind in costs and require massive government subsidies to the day. Now, we do have a plan to deal with that, and we've in fact already made a start, but it's important to remember history before you guys get on your feet with all your lofty claims that thanks to your failed process, we've had a massive fix-up job on our hands. One that we take in our strides, we've got the talent to tackle it, and we've made great inroads. All right, speak for yourself, speak for yourself. Right, now, electricity market review. In March 2014, the Minister for Energy announced a review into the market structure to address the failed disaggregation process. And we know that there was a large number of recommendations that have come from that. One of the key measures that was recommended, and it's a measure that the government has accepted, is that we move towards retail contestability. And that is certainly something, a move that is supported by members on this side of the House. And we're confident, in fact, that we can achieve that. We're confident that we can move towards retail contestability. We're confident that we can do this through synergy. And we're confident that the reforms to the market will do that. But first and foremost, what we actually need to do is actually look at how can, moving forward, we get to a point where we no longer have to have these huge subsidies to synergy before we have any chance of reaching a point where we have full retail contestability, a legacy of the members opposite. Now, the member for Cannington decries that we have failed to plan for the large-scale renewable energy target, which I thought was quite interesting. I think we should consider that for a moment. Besides the fact that actually this state, through synergy, has already underpinned hundreds of millions of dollars in renewable energy investment in this state. We've seen new wind farms, we've seen new power plants, and we've certainly made a significant enough investment to help meet our initial requirements of the near decade-old RET. But the interesting thing is what we're talking about, of course, now is the new RET target, which, unless something has changed in the last hour or so, hasn't been finalised yet. Why hasn't it been finalised? Who's stalling this process? Last time I checked, it's not us that's stalling it. Not forgetting it is a federal government initiative. It's not a state initiative. This is a federal initiative binding all states at a national level. And last time I checked, it's actually your federal colleagues that are playing games with the RET target. It's your colleagues that are stalling and mucking around and preventing it from actually being finalised. So I think it's a little bit rich to come into this place, stand on your feet and then try and condemn us. Maybe you should get on your phone instead of surfing the net, call your friend Bill Shorten and condemn them for failing to plan for the RET. Because at the moment, we still have no clear direction of where the RET going into the future is actually going to land. Now, Western Australia will be ready for the final stages of the RET if and when the Labor opposition finally stops opposing it and actually moves forward with a sensible plan, sets it down in law and move forward. We'll be ready for it. Now, we know that people in this state use renewable energy in a diverse set of circumstances. And to the credit of the member for Gosnells, he did give some of those examples. In fact, the member for Gosnells started the discussion by talking about rooftop solar panels. And like I said, the motion talks about the entire energy portfolio. So let's have a talk about rooftop solar panels. There are now, as we've heard from the member for Gosnells, approximately 450 megawatts of rooftop solar panels installed throughout the Swiss. And why is that? Because this government has funded the residential feed-in tariff scheme and the renewable energy buyback scheme. A phenomenal investment that has seen prices of this technology come down. It has seen huge investment in that technology.
Member for Colin
And you
Preston.
know, as I go door knocking around my electorate and I come up to homes, I'm amazed and delighted to see more and more homes with rooftop solar panels. It's generally not hard to spot them if in fact you can't already see the panels on the roof. Normally by the time you come up to the front door they've got that second little juncture box, or call it what you will, and so it's fairly easy, even as a humble backbencher from Joondalup, to make a bit of an analogy of going, gee, there's more and more homes in my electorate and they're not necessarily the well-off homes. We've heard that argument from members opposite, that this scheme is only benefiting the really wealthy and rich people and it'll be all the not-so-well-off people that are going to be subsidising it. Can I say absolute rubbish? All right, now, in the electorate of Joondalup, I'd like to consider us a very aspirational electorate, and I've got a broad range of some suburbs are, you might say, a little bit more wealthier or better well off, and some of the other suburbs are really middle of the range, hard-working, tradie orientated, young families that are neither rich nor poor. They're what we would call middle-class Western Australia. And can I actually say it's those very suburbs, the suburbs of Heathridge, of Belden, of Craigie and Edgewater, that have seen a phenomenal take-up of solar energy. Why? Because this government has supported it, and we've supported it generously, and I wonder whether the members opposite are suggesting that we shouldn't have done that. It's all quiet on the Western Front. Righto. Well, I'm glad, and that's fine, that's okay, I aim to please. Now, moving on, it's quite interesting. We've heard from the member for Cannington get up on his high horse. How dare we even consider, purchasing renewable energy from over in the eastern states? I need to dissect that for a moment. Can I seek an extension, please?
Extension granted.
Speaker? Thank you. Well, I mean, you just told me how glad you were listening to me. I don't want to disappoint you.
I'm enthralled.
Now, as I've said before, the member for Cannington's got a particular skill, and that particular skill is that he takes the truth, he dilutes it a little bit and, changes it and morphs it a little bit to try and come up and sound all intelligent to try and progress an argument. Doesn't generally stack up to much scrutiny. But there was one element that the member for Cannington remarked that is true, which is that states are able to, if we want to, purchase our renewable energy certificates and energy, as he said, from the eastern states. He's right about that aspect because it's a national system. It is a national scheme. So the whole idea is that as long as you meet your target, how you achieve that target is up to you. We'll give him that much credit. But then he goes onto his high horse. In fact, half of his motion is basically aimed towards the assumption that that's exactly what we're going to be doing in Western Australia. This whole assumption that clearly we're not going to have any investment at all in large-scale renewable energy, and somewhere along the line he's of the opinion that we're actually just going to sit back and buy all of our renewable energy, certificates of energy from over east. Well, I'd love to see that policy paper, or, if you've got anything to back that claim up. I certainly haven't heard from her. The Minister for Energy is shaking his head. Just because we can doesn't mean we will. Won't stop you guys from doing an entire motion on it and rabbiting on. But the reality is, even in the area of large-scale renewable energy, this side of the House is more than happy to stand on our record. And you don't have to look too far to have a look at some pretty amazing investment in large-scale renewable energy projects that have already occurred under this government. We've underwritten the success of the $750 million, 206 megawatt Colga wind farm in Merredin, which supplies renewable energy into the Swiss. And Synergy has directly invested $40 million to build the 14 megawatt Grassmere wind farm in Albany. And that was completed in 2011. Large-scale renewable energy projects successfully delivered. Synergy has also successfully entered into joint ventures to build the $50 million 10 megawatt Grenfell River solar farm and the $200 million 55 megawatt Mumbita wind farm, both of which are located southeast of Geraldton, and they were completed in 2012 and 2013 respectively. Now, the Grenfell River solar farm was made possible through a $10 million injection of capital from the Royalties for Regions program. Another great example of wise use of the Royalties for Regions program. And actually, we believe that the Royalties for Regions program has the potential to be a leading funding stream for renewable and off-the-grid energy solutions in the future. So that is just an example of some of the projects that have already been undertaken. And we know that as we speak, that Western Power is working actively to look at new investment opportunities, to look at other projects that are going to be viable. What we are waiting on is to actually have a properly defined set of goalposts from the National RET. And as soon as you finish talking to Bill Shorten and ask him to get on with actually agreeing to what that will be, the sooner we can actually see what best technology will be implemented to achieve that. So I'll leave it now to the Minister for Energy and any other backbenchers that might want to talk more about that. But I just thought I'd share those few words with you. I think it's a little bit of a ludicrous motion to bring before the House, but nonetheless, we're always up for a bit of a debate, especially when it's quite shallow and it doesn't take too long to find the cracks in your debate. But thank you, Mr Acting Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.